Face front, true believers. It is time for Comic Conversation. We're here again Thursday. It's right now. It's Edwin and myself. We'll be joined by Justin very shortly. Chris will be unfortunately not joining us tonight because he's got some things going on in his personal life. We'll hopefully wish him best of luck and back next week. But tonight is a very special episode. We do have a few topics to cover. We're going to review Uncanny X-Men, talk about some news. I know we have some Spawn fans in the crowd, in the chat, also on the panel. So I just want to give a couple updates on that. Some like Star Wars, Game of Thrones type stuff too. We'll touch on that quickly. But what we really want to talk about tonight is Stan Lee. We all know the news. Stan Lee passed this week at 95 years old. And we want to celebrate his life, his legacy, talk about the impact that he had on our lives, our hobby, and just explore and celebrate the man himself. So we're going to talk about all of that tonight, and we definitely want to hear from you as well, whether you are here with us live in the chat, if you're streaming us, if you're listening to this later. Leave us a comment. Tell us, did you meet Stan Lee? What did he mean to you? When was the first time you met him or kind of learned about him? And what, now that you understand his impact and his legacy, what are you going to do going forward with that to carry the torch? So we'll touch on all that, but before we get into that, we'll do some updates, a couple of shout outs to the people who are in the chat with us here. I see Iron Galactus. It is Thursday. That's right. I actually I was calling us the four Norsemen of Thursday. So the four horsemen. I don't know. Thought that was funny. Jason Smith is here. I see Stay Puff, Scotty, Philly Superman as well, our moderator, and liking the covers 4963. Very nice to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, man. Nice to see you in the chat. And of course, you know, as people come in, we'll get some shout outs. If you have something you want to share about Stan Lee, we'll read it out loud too. So definitely I'll go ahead and share that. And talking about sharing, if you don't mind sharing this video as well on your social media, let's get a few more people in here and get that conversation going. So
yeah, sharing is caring.
That's right. That's right. So I'm going to kick it over to you. What have you been doing in the past week? Anything fun and exciting in Strictly Land?
Just pressing a lot of books.
Yeah.
I'm working on a little project we talked about. Hopefully I can go public with it in the next few days. So some people know about it. Puff, I talked to him about it last night, but that's really been taking up most of my time. But I've been doing a lot of really just enjoying people's posts on Instagram, and even the conversation that Tim and them had last night on Lords of the Long Box regarding like Stan Lee and whatnot. So really just been kind of just taking it in, because it's still kind of I guess that kind of hasn't really hit me yet that Stan's gone, because we tend to think that he's immortal, but
he seems that way, right?
Yeah, but he's finally taking that that long ride,
right? So all right. Yeah, big shout out to TiVo and the Lords of the Long Box crew, and Kit Lashley too. It's a great show over there. I had to watch it on the replay. So
okay. Did Kenny end up showing up?
Not the part that I saw. No.
Okay. Yeah, when I was on there, he was there.
But yeah, always a good show over there. Good times. So yeah, not a whole lot is up with me in terms of like collecting, I guess, because I am moving, so I'm not really like trying to buy new stuff just to have to carry more stuff. So Ken wasn't on the show. Okay, so that's what I figured. I didn't get to see the entire thing, but the part I saw, he wasn't there. So no worries on that. I'm sure he'll show up at a different point in time on the show. But I did go to a convention over the weekend on Saturday. That was a lot of fun. It was a smaller show down in Miami, right near the airport there. And it's called Gamer Comic Expo. Put up a whole bunch of photos on my Instagram, which is
I've seen that.
So I like doing like cosplay photography. It's fun, and people really like when they see their pictures posted up, they like get really excited about it, which is really cool, So it's happy to see some of those reactions. But they had who was there? Just a couple people. Mark Teixeira was there for artists. Ransom Getty, who's done some stuff for DC, who I found out is from Vermont. He's a pretty cool guy. And in terms of celebrities, the kind of like William Shatner was there, a couple other people that we see pretty regularly. Yeah, he had like some security with him and stuff. I got some good footage with him and stuff like that. So, and then the one that I really liked that I had fun meeting was Emma Dumont, who plays Polaris on The Gifted Fox show. And she was really nice. She was cool. Got a couple pictures with her too, so it was pretty cool. And then that's pretty much it in terms of my updates.
Is that the same Polaris from the X-Men? Because I haven't watched it. Okay.
Same Polaris.
All right.
Except her parents are not who we thought they were.
Right. Yeah. But she just barely got like the headpiece thing too. So. But yeah, nice to have you here, Justin.
Hey, thanks for
a little low, so not low, late.
Yeah. Life gets in the way, I tell you.
Yeah. Traffic gets in the way.
Yeah.
So, what's been new for you since last week?
Not a whole lot, but man, this new comic book day yesterday was a big one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the biggest one I've had in a couple months at least. Yeah.
You're just talking about going down to 4 books.
Yeah, no, right? Well, that's like you have those like titles that if you were just going to quit everything else, these were your certain titles that you'd still pick up. I think I could cut it down to 4 a month, which with the way they come out, it would still be more than 4 books a month,
Right, exactly. DC, it's 4, but you're talking about 8.
Right, a minimum,
Yeah.
So, but it's just one of those things that, I don't know, you think about doing every once in a while.
Yeah, that's the life of a collector, though.
That's right. It's like you're always changing up what you're collecting.
Right.
Like, whether it being ongoing series that you've decided you don't like anymore, or whether it be like a mini series.
Justin?
Is he there? Can you hear me?
Justin.
Oh.
I don't know what happened to him.
Okay,
I hit a button.
Okay.
I don't even know what I was saying there, but yeah, just some stuff about comics. Yeah,
stuff and things and books.
Sorry.
That's all good. It's all good. So okay, cool. So some updates there, and I was telling them, people listening, that Chris won't be with us tonight. So hopefully he'll be back next week, and everything will be all right in Boston Chris Comics land. So.
Indeed.
Wish him the best. And the dreaded button. Yeah, no. We're still going here. So, okay. So let's get into the big thing for tonight, which of course is Stan Lee. I know everybody has been doing tribute videos. Probably your feed has a whole bunch of stuff, coming up, tributes and stuff. And that's really good. I know some people are talking about, everyone's doing it, just to have views or whatever. But no, it's not about that. We'll talk about it a whole bunch with, the impact that Stan Lee had on each of our lives, and just, that connection, that emotional connection we had to these characters, and just how much all that meant to us, and having those videos and talking about it, and like us talking about it tonight, or, people who want to share in the chat. It's celebration of Stan Lee, but it's also like very cathartic for us as well, because there's a lot, you want to say and talk about and express. And, there's, at least for me, at least, you hear about celebrities and stuff, and it's not always, like, it's sad, but it's not like you have an emotional reaction to it. Right. But there are some where there just is an exception to that, and this was one of them, I think, for most people. So it's important to have these types of videos out there for people to listen to, and for us as the people talking to share as well. So I'm happy to do that, even though it's a couple days after the event. So I see Genome is here as well, Daniel Ibarra, Rag718 as well, and Doom popped in as well. So very cool. So I guess kind of like we'll start, what I wanted to do was just kind of like share a little bit about his life, kind of like the impact that he had on us, like, as young collectors when we first, met him, I know, or heard about him, first realized who he was, and I know that for Edwin, you met him a couple times, so you have a couple stories, to share. So I want to hear those too. And then of course, what do we think his legacy will be kind of moving forward now? Like now that we're a couple days into a world without Stan Lee, what does that look like for the hobby, for pop culture, because it's going to be different, but we'll talk about how different that is. So one of the things with Stan is just how long he's been in the industry. He started right as an office assistant in 1939. That's before the United States entered World War II, right? This is when, it was Timely, then Marvel became Atlas, and this was all under Martin Goodman, right? So he's related to Martin Goodman. That's how he got the job.
So he was like 26.
Yeah.
26 when he did start. Okay.
In 39, yep. He joined the Army at one point, I think. And I was listening to something recently where he was talking about a job that he had before all this when he was younger. It was kind of eerie. I think it was an early Conan thing. He was talking about how he used to write obituaries for people who weren't dead yet. Yeah. And the thing with that is, because somebody passes, and all of a sudden that same day there's all these like giant articles about it, and he was like, "Well, how does that happen?" And he's like, "Well, if somebody's famous enough, somebody's already done the research on the biography and stuff, and that stuff's all like ready to go." So, at least back then, he was one of the people who would do that because we didn't have like Google and stuff to look stuff up really quickly. So somebody would have to like get that out, do the research, so that it was ready to go in the paper the next day, right? So. A little bit different in that environment, but there was the Comics Code Authority. Actually, I don't know if you guys saw a while back, I did a video on I did a couple on like the history of comics, and one of them was how DC saved Marvel. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I broke down with Stan Lee and the history there, and the Comics Code Authority in the 50s and how that affected comics, and basically watered down the comics and made them like, it was much more a lighthearted content than the horror and stuff that came before that with like EC Comics and stuff. And then, so there was a whole period of time there where a lot of people were not buying comics. It was kind of like the Red Scare, there was like book burnings and stuff like that. So Marvel was struggling at this point in time, and they needed another publisher. The publisher they were using, the person that was printing out stuff, went out of business. And so they actually reached out to National Periodicals, who was the parent company for DC. That's why they were limited to a certain amount of books. I think it was 8. And that's why you got, books with combos in them, like the Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense and stuff, right? How they have 2 in there, 2 characters. It's because of that limitation.
Okay.
Once that basically stopped, I think it was 1968, and that's when he had like the Marvel explosion. That's like during that time period right there is when Stan and Jack, everybody was creating all these characters. He obviously made hundreds of characters, right? They revitalized whole industry essentially, but he was a pioneer of what they called the Marvel method. Right? That is, right? Basically, what Stan would do is he came up with the framework. He would make a idea and kind of an outline and send it over to the artist and say, hey, draw this how you want. That did a couple of things. That allowed him to meet some good budgets. No, not budgets, deadlines. Deadlines, yeah. Probably budgets too. Yeah. And it also kind of it gave, like Jack Kirby, for example, he was able to put in his artistic flair to it and make it unique and make it different. And that kind of like, because they were a little bit behind DC at the time, it allowed them to step away and kind of be something different and separate. And it was really cool. And that's something that I think a lot of companies still use today, is that Marvel method, right? So that's pretty important. And then there was one other story, of course, with the Fantastic Four and that whole like watered down period after the Comics Code Authority and the big famous trial, which was it 54? I think it was 1954. Anyways, he wanted to quit. He was kind of done with it. And his wife, Joni, she said, if you're going to quit anyways, why don't you make one more book, right? This is a cool story. Make one more book. do what you want with it, and what's the worst that can happen? They're going to say leave. You're going to leave anyways. So he created the Fantastic Four, and that's how we got the Fantastic Four. And of course, he did Amazing Fantasy. Tried to revitalize that throughout Spider-Man. People liked it, and that became Spider-Man as well. So he's creating these characters, but he was creating these characters with flaws. Like there were things people could relate to, everyday problems, the girl problems and the money problems and scheduling problems and the kids with the whatever it was, things that people could relate to. And that was something that also, not only the Marvel method, but this idea that heroes, it's okay to have flaws and you can draw power from those flaws too. He was always kind of like with the power and the character kind of drawing that from each other. And I think a good example is the Fantastic Four. And I might have said this before on a different show, but if you think about the way he structured the characters and the power set for the Fantastic Four, you have like Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, right? He's like a rigid scientist. And what's his power? He's like stretchy and loose, which is the opposite of science, right? You have Ben Grimm. He's got this heart of gold, he's just this lovable old blue eyes, but he's made out of rock. He's stone. Then you get this beautiful lady, Mr. Invisible, and you can't see her. Yeah, Mrs. Invisible.
Whatever she wants to go by, it's cool.
She's invisible. She can be anything. It's like a Schrodinger situation. And of course, you have the cool guy. He's made out of fire, right? So it's kind of like the way he did the character and their power, kind of drawing from each other. And you can draw your power from your weakness or your strength. And that was a message that I think that he was able to resonate with so many people. And then on top of that, I think it was 1960. I shared this on Twitter. It was a soapbox. Right. One of the things he's famous for is the bullpen bulletin. And then the big one is Stan's soapbox. And that's where he was able to, when he stopped writing, right, it became, it went from written by Stan Lee to, Stan Lee presents on the top of every book. Right. So he wasn't writing at the time. He was having everybody else kind of write. Maybe he had some ideas there, but he was still writing the soapbox. And that was something that in some books, when I was reading it, in the summertime, probably 8, 9, 10 years old and sitting in my room and reading the books. And I don't remember the story, but sometimes I remember those soapboxes and, those books went out to millions of people. But when you're reading that, it kind of felt like he was talking just to you, it just kind of felt like it was like that cool uncle and you were just there and you felt like part of like a club or part of, the Merry Marvel Marching Society. He had all these like clubs and stuff that he would make for people, but it felt like a big family, with him and with, other collectors. And I didn't know a ton of people that collected comics, but it just felt like a cool club to be a part of. And this guy at the head of it, when you bought that book, he was talking to you. So it was pretty cool.
That was our medium before freaking Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's
letter pages were the only place where you would actually see what other people were saying,
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Did you ever write in when you were younger? On the letter page?
I never had anything published though.
Yeah. All right,
I'm pretty sure they got tons of people that wrote in.
Yeah, especially like I feel like looking back on it, if you wrote into like a book that had like not Spider-Man or not Batman, but if you wrote into like Aquaman back in the day, probably had a pretty good chance of yours getting published.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Let me give a couple of shout outs here. Daniel Ibarra is here. Gina presents. Mr. D. We Love Comics. Nick Miller. Let's see who else. Wellington is here. Wellington Smithopoulos. Dan Piercy. What's up, man? Nice to have you here as well. So, very cool. And again, I said it at the top of the show. If you guys have stories, things you want to share about Stanley as well, go ahead and write that in there. We'll shout it out. If you're listening later, drop a comment and definitely make a point to respond to all those. I want to hear all that. So, yeah. So kind of, what was it? Todd McFarlane. He made an article recently, and he was talking about, yeah, maybe you read it. Like he went to visit Stan, and we'll touch on it in a second. But this past like year and a half of his life, this kind of like cloud over his life, not just like emotionally, I guess, but it was just these people kind of circling him, and ever since then, we kind of knew that this was coming, right?
Yeah.
But even though it's expected, he's 95, it's still grossly unexpected. But during that time, Todd McFarlane actually went to visit his house just to hang out with him and stuff. And he was kind of like, he was tired and stuff. And Todd said that a couple times, he said a couple times, I just want to go see Joni. Like he was just, that was the love of his life, ever since,
ready. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that just that and just everything, just I feel like he was ready. Like I feel like he felt like it was his time and it was the right thing because he got to go be with the love of his life. She was the one who inspired him to make Fantastic Four, so that tells you how long they were together. But he was tired when Todd went to see him, and he was like, let me tell you a couple stories. I got some cool stories. Like, every time somebody goes and visits Stan, we always see like stories or you see videos of him. He's on stage and he's like so full of energy and, all this stuff. But, and I don't know personally, but from what I hear from other people who did know him behind the scenes, as much of an act as that was, it wasn't an act. Like that was really how he was, energy, joking, just full of life and just fun, so
it almost makes you wonder if he was having the best time of his life toward the end there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the whole Marvel was such a worldwide thing that it was more popular than it's ever been, and people were always, I'm pretty sure he was being tugged at 10 different directions, and it probably wasn't like that 30 years ago or 40 years ago.
Right. Yeah, they call him the king of cameos now, right? He's in like every Marvel movie, for the past. Well, I think the first movie that it's probably one of my favorites too. Actually, funny enough, it's not part of the MCU. Is Mallrats. That was in the mid '90s.
Yeah,
that was such a cool scene because I felt like at the time, like not everybody knew who Stan Lee was, but when you're watching that movie, it was like, holy shit, that's Stan Lee, and like. He's always talking about superheroes or comic books, but the things he's saying are just like about life in general, and just kind of they're profound.
Although
So,
I don't remember seeing him in Blade. I don't think he was in Blade. I think it's probably the only Marvel movie he wasn't in.
Probably not. Yeah. he there was it was the Fantastic Four movie. Who was what's the director's name? He does like B budget movies. Roger Corman.
Oh yeah, the one that never came out. Yeah,
exactly. He like showed up on the set for that and was basically like, "No, I'm not gonna. I'll hang out, but I don't want to be in this." So, but it was kind of like basically made like Avi Arad made that so that they could keep the rights. That was like really like they didn't ever intend on it being like put out. They just had to have a movie made to retain the rights. Kind of crazy. But that movie is out there if you ever look for it. I've seen it. It's
I think the first cameo I saw him in was like younger. When I was younger, I saw a replay of the trial of the Incredible Hulk.
Oh yeah,
and he was in the jury.
I don't see that.
But I watched it because I was like, oh yeah, because Daredevil shows up. Or a guy in a red skin tight suit shows up.
Just some random guy. Oh.
Yeah. And there's no D's or anything. Well, who are you?
That's how they dressed back then.
That's right.
That's cool. Yeah, I never saw that one. So that would have been the Ferrigno series?
Yeah. Yeah, it was it was like a movie that came out a year or two after. Before the movie with Thor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that the Iron Man with like the bullet helmet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one? I see Sleepy Reader here. He says somehow it seemed Lee would be here forever. Yeah, it really did, right? And he is. He really is. If you think about it, the man might have died, but he kind of became like Stan created hundreds of characters, right? But I think in some ways, one of his greatest creations was Stan Lee, right? He became like this larger than life character that everybody knows, and he created this whole world. And I know that TiVo was talking about it yesterday, and arguably, you have Walt Disney, you have George Lucas, a bunch of other people that created these whole worlds. The people who wrote Greek mythology, Shakespeare, that created these whole worlds for people to experience, or these timely books that just pass down through time, through eons of time and centuries. If you're talking about mythology, and you have Stan Lee who did that too. In this day and age, when at the snap of a finger you can have something we're saying be broadcast, on the other side of the world, your reach is the greatest it's ever been. His creations are global in reach. They've transcended comics. They've transcended not pop culture, but they're just everywhere. It's one of the most recognizable brands in the world. If you put up a Spidey head or something like that, people are going to recognize that, just like the McDonald's sign. So I think with that in mind, even though he's passed, he's still very much here with us and will remain here very much with us for a long, long time, I would say for generations, easily.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he was I mean, I don't know if Justin or if you or Jesse had the chance to meet Stan, but I met him for the first time back in 2014 or 2015. And he came here to Houston and he was doing signatures for like $60. And
nice.
That was nothing, man. Like, because actually it went up like $20 a year after that. And then it got to the point where he was doing signature for like $150 or $160 toward the end there. But just having the opportunity to meet him, because some people will go above and beyond when it comes to these conventions. People will travel halfway across the country or even further just to go see their favorite creator at a con. And when he was here in Houston, man, I just took full advantage. I had a bunch of slabs. I cracked them all open, got them signed, resubmitted. And but I know that when I met him, he was actually shaking hands because toward the end there, he quit shaking hands, because he was getting sick and he was just doing the fist bump. And it was just such an honor and a privilege. And I mean, I didn't have to wait like 3 hours like I think our TiVo had said, but I think I stood in line for like 45 minutes or whatever. But I mean, just such a warm presence to this guy, and to be as big as he was and still lend himself to shake hands and talk to people. I think that's a pretty amazing thing, because you get some people, these stars that get so big and they just don't. A lot of them don't. It's not even worth their time to pay attention to little old us. But it was great though. It was. I mean, he was just. I was privileged and honored to be able to meet him.
Yes, very cool. Oh, I didn't finish you reminded me. I didn't finish the Todd McFarlane thing. So he was talking about, he was young. He was just a kid at a summer camp or something like that. He was doing like some away thing, and Stan Lee came and he was the guest, and he was regaling them like the whole afternoon with all these Stan Lee-ish stories, these fantastical stories of his life, and just the messages there, whatever it was. And that had such an impact on Todd. And that was obviously one of the things that he knew he was, but years later he met him and he didn't like have any clue who he was, but that was something that he had to share with Stan, like this great impact that you had on me. And he spent the whole afternoon with Todd, with the whole group of kids. But Todd said in this article I read that he truly felt like that was something that Stan liked to do. he loved his fans so much that even if it was just, going across his table and it was a quick, like 30-second little soundbite, he tried to give each fan that same like experience, that same impact, or that, whatever it was, just a little bit of stand to take with you. And reading the comments here. And just really tried to take time for each and every one of his fans, because he really, really appreciated and loved and respected his fans, and understood that it was the fans that got him where he was. Without that fandom there, that, would there be, Marvel Comics? Would there be, anything like that we have today? So, Wellington Smithopoulos, he said, I read an article today that reported the combined total revenue for Marvel comic hero movies was $30 billion bucks. It works out to $4.30 per person worldwide.
Jeez,
that's a hell of a lot of money. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, I think Avengers alone are somewhere north of $4 billion. So that's crazy. That's a lot of money. Nick Miller says, "Hey Thanatos." Dan Percy says he's free now. He seemed a bit out of it the last couple of years. Yeah, I think he was really tired, and just he was ready to go be with his wife again. And he says that again, with his wife again. Exactly. No one's taking advantage of him anymore. The Todd McFarlane interview about Stan Lee in his final days was a great insight. Yeah, it really was. It really was. And then Wellington says, I feel like I got to know Stan through his comics. Even my 19-year-old daughter texts me to tell me of his passing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the crazy thing about that day, is I had like a lot of people like, oh, did you hear? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was, enough that it was such a big impact that a lot of people wanted to reach out and just, say something about it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember where was it? On Monday at like 2 p.m. Just heard that Stan Lee died. He lived a long, good life. That came from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
When my mom hears about things like that, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and then let's see here. So Stay Puft says, "Oh, go ahead."
Well, I remember about the interview with Todd McFarlane you were talking about. I remember one of the things that he specifically pointed out was when he was observing Stan Lee, he was like he looked like he just recalled and remember seeing an older man that, what do you say, like, I'm paraphrasing, like a 95-year-old man that looked like a 95-year-old man.
Yeah.
So it was clear that he was old, and he just wasn't the same as he's known him throughout the previous 30 or 40 years of his comic book career.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kind of like, I feel like he lost that spark at the end, And we were talking about it for, a few episodes, the kind of like tracking with all the issues going on with, like there was the whole DNA thing. There was, the estate with the managers and his daughter, all the money that was stolen and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of worried that cloud would kind of mar his legacy, because, we all had kind of, we didn't want to say it, but in mind, like, once he dies, once we get to that point, is this going to be what people remember because it was the last thing? And happily, I think that we can all say that no, it's not. Like, we remember it and stuff, but that's not what is defining Stan for us. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm. It was part of his life at the end, but it was by no means the Stan that we will all know and remember. Jackie O's here. He says, "Hey guys, sad day for all of us nerds." Stay Puft says, yeah, the comics, his appearances on TV, his narration of cartoons, we got to grow up with him in our lives. Exactly. We did through so many media too. We grew up, I think, very similar around the same time. And I think a lot of folks here with us, but there's a whole generation out there who only know Stan from the cameos. Like, that's the guy in all the Marvel movies,
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that's not a bad thing. That's just how they recognize him. That's the impact that they'll have. But hopefully one day, and I just dumped over my comics. Hopefully, hopefully one day that will inspire them to pick up a book and read some of the good stuff that inspired all those movies they love. So, he passed, but they shot a bunch of cameos, so we're still going to see him in a few movies. I know Captain Marvel, Avengers 4, Far From Home. So at least 3 more movies we'll see him in. So
yeah, my concern is usually the first movie that comes out after somebody dies, they say dedicated or in memory of so and so, and I'm thinking like, is it gonna be Captain Marvel? Because you're talking about like probably the 140th most popular character. I would love to see it like on Avengers 4, but I have a feeling they're gonna do it for Captain Marvel. So
probably just because it's the next one.
It's the next one. Yeah.
Maybe they'll do, because how they have like 10 years of Marvel Studios. Maybe they'll do something that will carry through like the next year of movies. That would be nice too, just to have that. I think he's big enough to warrant not just like a in memory of in one movie.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah.
But one of the cool things was DC kind of acknowledged and gave recognition towards Stan and what he's done for comics throughout the years. That's one of the things I thought was really, really cool. Like they couldn't deny the impact that this guy had on the industry, and so one of the pictures that somebody put on Facebook was, if you remember, the Death of Superman, where they just show the casket and they have the Justice League walk along the side and the entire DC cast walking behind that. And so I'm still waiting for somebody to Photoshop that casket with the Superman logo on it and put like Stan Lee on it or something.
Oh yeah.
And like have the whole DC cast walking behind Stan Lee's casket.
Yeah. Yeah, we say he's Marvel, He's the chairman emeritus of Marvel. He's the ambassador of Marvel, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
He's the ambassador of comics in general, I think I saw some posts from like Boom Studios and IDW and Image and, just the entire industry just had to stop and take a pause, Didn't matter, what your allegiance was or, just everybody understood the importance that he had. And none of these people that are working today, arguably, would be here right now if it wasn't for the things that this man did, So for them to stop and honor it, respect him, take a second and say thank you, was very classy, to borrow Dan Piercy's word. He said DC has always been classy. Yeah, I think that day of any other day, the industry, especially recently, the industry was very classy in their response. So, and people were talking about driving down the highway and there'd be like a billboard. I think actually TiVo mentioned it. He was driving down the highway on wherever he was in California, and there was a billboard and it just said like Excelsior on it, and the date. So quite the impact. We're talking about being classy. One of the, I don't know how to bring this up. So speculating. There's been a lot of people posting up and promoting, this is signed by Stan Lee. It's like a day or two later, the price is up. Trying to flip stuff and get on that, Stan Lee hype. There's 2 camps there. Some are like, that's completely distasteful. Wait a minute. Why are you trying to profit off of a man's death? The other camp says, I didn't say which one I'm in yet. The other camp says, Stan made an entire career of making money off of his name. Would he really be upset about you trying to get just a little bit of that, money for yourself, So so that's kind of like the two sides there. But let me just read a couple more comments here. Like in the cover says, I heard a story about a teacher who bought copies of different issues of True Believers for his students to read, to show those early stories to them. That's awesome. That's a really great way to get those into their hands, and for a really good price too.
$1,
Right? Exactly. Yeah. I had a whole stack of books that I was trying to give out the whole stack on Halloween, just for that same idea, just to get those books into some kids' hands, because that ultimately is our next generation of the hobby, However they get those books, they just gotta get those in their hands. And then Sleepy Reader says, great conversation, guys. Sad I have to go have dinner. Don't apologize for eating. That's how we sustain ourselves. Cheers. So have a good night, Sleepy.
Yeah, have a good one, man.
Enjoy your sleep. So Dan says this should be interesting. He's talking about those two camps with the speculating, flipping and selling when somebody dies, when the attention is on their name. It's happened quite a bit. Carrie Fisher passed. It's happened to Rich Buckler passed, Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson, a whole bunch of people who have passed over the past few years. And this kind of always happens with that. But where do you stand in terms of, like, would you be uncomfortable or would you have no problem flipping a Stan Lee book, like say the same week or a few days later? And would you mark up the price at all, or would you just expect it to move sooner than it would normally? That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, that's a tough. Like, there's like morality in that one.
Exactly. So for me, I'll just say what I would think, and I think it's completely distasteful. I wouldn't do it. I don't know. It not just specifically with Stan Lee, just in general. I just feel like there's a bit of disrespect there. Like, even with that idea that he made money off of his own name, it just doesn't feel right for me to want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, here's one of the arguments that I've heard from somebody recently. They said that I remember I was getting Stan Lee to sign my stuff for free at one point. Mm-hmm. And then it got all the way up to the point where he was charging, I don't know if he said like $120, $150 a signature. And he was like, if they kept upping the price, and he acknowledged the fact that it probably wasn't Stan Lee, it was more so his handlers that was doing this. But the fact that they kept upping the price, they were like, you know what? If I can make a buck off of it, I'm going to up the price on my stuff, and I'm going to sell it to the highest bidder. And I understand that. But you got to also look at the fact of what happened with Michael Jackson and Prince. I mean, when those two died, people were capitalizing on them and trying to make profits off of their death as well. I mean, Michael Jackson memorabilia, glows, signatures, prints, that stuff was just going for a premium because people know that once a star or celebrity dies, that's when you're going to maximize your profits of whatever signed memorabilia it is that you have. So I can look at both sides of the situation. It can be, I guess, a little bit disrespectful, but at the same time, they just kept charging you more and more and more money for a signature. And I remember, I think it was Chris that talked about this, how he was like, he wasn't going to pay, that kind of money for a signature. And I understand. I mean, and you got a lot of people that weren't going to do that. But then again, some of those same people, they wanted a Stan Lee signature. I'm like, well, you need to just go ahead and bite the bullet, pay the price, and get one. Otherwise, he's not going to be around anymore, and you're not going to be able to get it. You're just going to have to buy whatever somebody else has put out on eBay.
Yeah. Jackie says, people who love comics wouldn't sell. Slabbers and speculators are a different part of the culture. And Dan says, Jesse, do you sell books at all? Signature books? Just curious, no judgment. I do, but ultimately that money goes back into other books.
Yeah.
So it's not, just...
You're not a flipper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I don't think it... I wouldn't sell Stan Lee signatures just because it's Stan Lee, man. So
Yeah, I've only got one Stanley signature, you know.
yeah.
So
And you're hanging on to that thing, right?
and I got it
Yeah.
just because I wanted to have a Stanley signature book. So
Right.
What book is that, by the way?
it's a Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 358, 368, something like that.
Oh, okay.
It's one with like the red skulls on the cover. It's a nothing book.
Okay.
That's
Is
why
it graded or no?
No, it's raw.
Oh, okay.
But it comes with the certificate and all that stuff, so
Sweet.
it looks real.
Yeah.
And I got it what, like 3 years ago or something. So I mean, I think I spent like $30 on it total. So
shoot, that was pretty good.
yeah.
I recommend this. It's a hardcover that I got at Barnes & Noble.
Yep, got it.
You got it?
Yep.
It's really cool. It's a story of Stan Lee, but told in comic book form.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some other cool, obviously, but it's got the whole. And I'm not telling you, Justin, because I know you have it.
No, somebody got it for me for Christmas last year. So
yeah, it's really cool. It's got a poster in it, and then it's got this really cool the last page here, and there's some really iconic images like with Uncle Ben and Peter right there walking away. There's one recently that I've seen just like that with it's Uncle Ben and I guess Stan, and he's just basically saying like, "You did good, kid," or he said like, "Enough said" on another one. But I recommend that. It's by Peter David, Colleen Doran.
You know what's funny about all this is that it's so huge because we live in a world now of social media. Because I don't ever really remember something this big when like Jack Kirby passed away. Yeah, or even Steve Ditko recently. I mean, and I know it was kind of a fault of his own because he's such a hermit and he never wanted to, put himself out there, which I think is just freaking stupid. But Stan Lee did, and he extended himself out to everybody, and I feel like if Ditko or Kirby had done the same thing. I don't know if Kirby did or not. I think he died like 94. I think the same type of impact would have been made on the world during the death of these people. So,
yeah, Ditko was a recluse basically. He died alone in his apartment. Really sad.
Yeah.
That's how he lived his life. There were stories where he didn't like being around people or working in the office. And he lived like in New York, and there were stories of people who would encounter him like in the middle of the night, like 1 a.m, working at the McDonald's on the tables there in Times Square.
What? Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's where he would do his work sometimes. Rare appearances of him out in sight. Jack Kirby's birthday is usually pretty celebrated on social media, though. Yeah, that's true. And I think that Jack is one that would be it would be different, if he had passed, last year versus, in the 90s. And that brings up an interesting conversation as well. There was a whole period, I think it was in the late 70s, with like creator rights, getting them some money, getting them their work back to them. And there was a conflict there with Jack and with Stan Lee, and they separated there. And same with Steve, too. There was a whole period with Amazing Spider-Man where they kind of were in conflict with each other. And that was one of the things that prompted Ditko to leave. And that's when Ramita came on after Ditko, right? So there's that shrewd businessman side to Stan that I think that a lot of us never saw, but that is indicative of you see that not directly. He was probably very, very like matter of fact, not matter of fact. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
Well,
he knew business. He built an empire. Is kind of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, my shop owner said that who's a Daily Bugle is a J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah,
was based on Stan Lee. his character.
believe it.
From what I heard.
Yeah. Dan says, I'm in the camp where Stan could have done more for Jack, but that's a discussion for another day. Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of a cloud over Stan at the time. People still talk about it to this day. The question of creator rights, and especially with Marvel, these creators are putting in pages and stories and creating new characters, but Marvel owns them. They make these pages, they submit the pages, and I don't know how it is now, but for the longest time, those would go to print, and then the originals would never go back to the artist. They would just be somewhere. And then it would take people, I think, like Flo Steinberg and people like that to, 10, 15, 20 years later, you get this package in the mail with, some old artwork you did, but they could have gotten it back, sold it, and done whatever, made a little bit of money for themselves. So, but like you said, that's a topic for another day. I wanted to ask you, Justin, what's your favorite for the Marvel, because we talked about Mallrats and how cool that scene was, but what's your favorite MCU cameo for Stan?
Oh man, that's
so many. Yeah,
I mean, the newer ones are all great. Like him talking to the Watchers was amazing.
Yeah,
that was just to see that was awesome.
There was a whole fan theory around that for the longest time, right? Oh, he's in all these cameos because he's a Watcher. But
he is a Watcher.
Now he is. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if I could actually just pick one.
Yeah,
it was just so good to see him in all those. I mean, and then I don't know, if you go back, maybe the first the Hulk movie with Eric Bana, because he's the security guard with Lou Ferrigno.
That's right.
And that was almost as perfect as it could be.
Yeah, there was a double nod. Yeah,
all of it.
Yeah, one of my favorites is when he was like, and now let's welcome to the stage Chastity. It was from Deadpool.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why I thought that was just so funny, but it was. And let me think what other ones were, like you said, there's just so many. It's always so quick and subtle too. He was even, Tony Stank. That's a good one too, right? It was a delivery guy.
Yeah.
Is this package for a Tony Stank? And he goes, "Yep, this is Tony Stank." He was even in the Netflix shows too. Even if it was a picture of him or something like that, it was sort of cameo-ish, But he had his hands in all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the other thing I wanted to mention was something that was posted, and this can kind of I guess be towards the end of this memorial conversation. I think it's a good place to kind of end it on a high note here. On Twitter, somebody was, has been managing his Twitter account, and he put up a post, posthumously posted this, and it was a Stan talking about his fans. We've been talking about all night the impact that he had on us as fans, us as a fandom, us personally, but all of the love and the attention and the support that we gave to him is equally as important. We impacted somebody's life, without ever having met them for most of our cases. And that's a huge thing. That's a really powerful thing. And, that's something that we as fans should be really proud of, that we allowed somebody to get to that point, where they were doing something that they truly loved, and we were celebrating that right along with them. And that ties right into what his quote was. He says, "Well, it's an equal love fest because I love my fans. I cannot tell you how much I love my fans. Sometimes at night I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what's it all about? And then I get a letter from a fan, or I read something, or I see something, or I remember something, and I realize it's so lucky to have fans who really care about you. And that's the reason I care so much about the fans, is because they make me feel so great. It's something, if you think about it, that is wonderful about somebody caring about you as I care about them, whom we've never met, who may live in another part of the world, but they care about you and you have something in common, and occasionally you contact each other. This is a business of fans, and I think it's terrific, and I love them all. And that's something Stan said in an interview about all of us. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
So, folks, that is our tribute to Stan the Man Lee. That is, something that we wanted to share. It's been a couple days. I know a lot of other folks have posted up their tributes, talked about it on their live shows, but we felt it really important to talk about it for us as well, and to share with you and to hear your comments here as well, and share with us. So thank you for being part of that. Thank you for, joining in the conversation, for listening. And thank you on behalf of Stan for, impacting his life. And, let's take his lessons, his stand against bigotry, his stand against racism, his stand against, the oppressed, the message that he gave us with X-Men, those messages about, the downtrodden and the oppressed and the minorities. And let's take that and do something with it. Let's carry that torch forward. He may be gone, but his legacy is still here with us. And we need to, as fans, as a fandom, carry that forward and do something great with it and be great, for the world and just for each other. So that's all I can say. Just, take that legacy and do something good with it now that he's passed it along to us.
Be excellent to each other.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. So, okay, so let's move on to a couple other things. So we have finally, it's quick things. Game of Thrones finally has a release date, thankfully. Could be coming out on season 8. Yep. We'll be premiering next April. So a couple months to go for that. We'll talk about Prince Oberyn from Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
That was played by Pedro Pascal.
Face squish.
Yes. Pedro was in Wonder Woman. It will be in Wonder Woman 84. But he's been tapped to play the lead in The Mandalorian, the Star Wars series that Jon Favreau wrote. So that's pretty cool. Thank you, liking the covers. Thank you, home of the NY Warriors, Biggies. Appreciate it. So that's pretty cool. We got that. Also, Gina Carano. She was in Deadpool. I think most people will probably know her from that, but she is like an MMA fighter from Strikeforce, right? She's pretty badass. We don't know what she's going to be playing, but she was tapped as well. And this is the series that was written by Jon Favreau. It's The Mandalorian. It's about the Mandalorians. So Dave Filoni, we know, is going to be writing the first few episodes. And then they're pulling in Taika Waititi, Bryce Dallas Howard, Rick is it Famuyiwa, who did Dope, Deborah Chow as well, who did Jessica Jones. So Marvel's pulling in all of these other creators there, directors, I should say, for this series. That's pretty cool. But the big thing there is that Pedro Pascal is going to be the lead for the show. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that Legendary bought the rights from Jeff Lemire for Black Hammer. So maybe a few years off yet before we see anything, but that may be coming to the screen, big or small, at some point. So pretty cool.
That info popped up on my phone yesterday from like the Key Comic Collector app.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he is pretty active doing that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll like this, Edwin. Venom is over 700 million worldwide. It's over gross for Justice League as well. That puts Sony over 2 billion for the year. This is their best since 2012. So they're having Sony's having a really good year. So you better believe those things that they've been teasing about, those superhero movies, those are coming. Those are coming. Maybe not all of them, but we'll be getting probably the Morbius movie and probably the
Oh yeah.
I don't know what, Silver Sable, or they were gonna break it up with the Black Cat, the separate one.
I
yeah,
think the Morbius was kind of contingent on the success of Venom, right?
yeah. It's kind of like that horror leaning,
Mm-hmm.
So
It could get interesting,
they're
man.
probably gonna make it now.
Yeah, my concern is that it's gonna be a tough sell. This is just what I'm speculating on. It's gonna be a tough sell to do a Venom 2, because I feel like you kind of got to see pretty much everything that you could see concerning Venom in the first one, and like, what are you gonna really sell on the next one? Because you already had 2 or 3 symbiotes in the first one. Yeah, but I mean, Carnage was just as brutal as what I guess Riot was supposed to be like. But yeah,
I think that's where they would have to bring in Spidey, right? Tom Holland wants to do it. Tom Hardy wants to do it.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah,
if you're gonna do Carnage or even a Maximum Carnage, you need multiple heroes and villains to be in a film like that.
It seems like what they should do is kind of like do the MCU method, introduce some people. So introduce Venom, introduce Morbius. Obviously, we know who Spider-Man is. Do Black Cat movie, and then like Maximum Carnage could be like your ensemble movie, like your version of the Avengers.
Yeah, you could have Deathlock in there.
Yeah, so you do all your intros. So by the time you get to Maximum Carnage, you can have all that. You can have that whole story, and everybody by then knows who they all are. So you don't have to spend your time like introing people. You can get right to the good stuff. Just an idea.
Yeah. I heard that movie, it needed to get 450 million just to break even.
Venom,
and that's just according to what's her name, Grace Randolph from Beyond the Trailer.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
if you do about I think it was 150 for the budget.
And I have my wife did do study in media saying that she learned that you got to get like 4 times your budget just to break even.
You absolutely do. You absolutely do. There's the budget. Then you have print and advertising. Then you have to pay all your distributors. You have to pay the movie theaters. There's so much that comes off the top before that money comes back to you. Yeah. So 100% that's accurate. Yeah. So the other thing that came out, I think it was today. We finally know who Cassandra Cain is going to be for Birds of Prey. And you won't know who she is. She's a newer actor. Her name's Ella J. Bosco. But the point there is that we have a Cassandra Cain now.
Nice.
There you go. So go get your Batman 567s. So
yeah. And then also, I don't know if he's going to be in it, but what's the Jimmy Olsen pal Superman? What's that? The first whatever number that first Dark Side is. The one before that is Cassandra Cain's dad. I think his first appearance. I don't know if it's going to be worth anything or whatever, but yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I think it was when Jack Kirby first started drawing that book too. So
yeah. That's pretty cool. Okay, so I think Edwin, you bought the Action 1000, the hardcover, and they changed it up a couple times, and you were kind of pissed off about it.
Yeah,
right. Okay,
that thing's sitting on the shelf collecting dust.
Yeah. So with that in mind, DC announced what their plans are for Tech 1000, Detective Comics 1000.
Oh no.
And you better believe it, they're doing a hardcover. So I brought up the other one because I'm hoping that they're not going to do the same thing with this. So
ripped off.
Exactly. It's going to be 2 books, supposedly. Detective 1000. And it's going to have something called Detective 80 Years of Batman Deluxe Edition. So it's obviously celebrating 80 years of it. It's going to be Peter Tomasi's on it with Doug Monkey for the story and art, and they're going to pull in a whole ton of people.
But are they going to include Detective Comics 1000 in that hardcover?
Well,
because that was my problem with the Action. It wasn't Action 1000 hardcover edition. It was just more of a
Yeah.
celebrating 80 years of Action Comics, and my beef with that book is that all it is
not
just
how
a
it was solicited.
hardcover version of it's just reprints. It's just other reprinted early Superman books put in a hardcover, and totally not worth it.
I think it's gonna be two separate things. You're gonna get your issue 1000, and then you're gonna get this hardcover. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, looks like it's two separate things. So it says the companion. Yeah, okay. So it is two separate things. This is the companion Detective Comics 80 Years of Batman hardcover, overseen by former DC publisher Paul Levitz, will include rare and unpublished shorts from Batman's history, including original layouts from Tech 200. Going to include essays from a whole bunch of people. Neil Gaiman, Denny O'Neil, Shelley Zimmerman. Bunch of people. Shelley Zimmerman was a San Diego police chief. But let me tell you about Tech 1000. Incoming Detective Comics creators Peter Tomasi and Doug are scheduled to write and draw lead story with additional. Oh, I already said this. With additional stories by Jeff Johns, Bendis, Paul Dini, Chris Priest, Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Kelly Jones, Dustin Nguyen, Alex Maleev, and it's scheduled to be 96 pages long. So pretty cool.
And what's the price point?
I would imagine for the detective, I don't think we know yet. I'm gonna guess $9.99 for 96 pages, and then the hardcover I'm guessing will be $29.99.
Yeah, $30.
Yeah, that's my guess on that. So yeah, just wanted to share that came out. That's kind of all we know about that right now. But I want to ask you guys: did you read Uncanny X-Men #1 that came out this week?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I read half of
it.
There's only like 9 stories in the back also. Jeez.
Yeah. Okay, so Uncanny X-Men, it came out. It's been a while. When was the last time we had an Uncanny X-Men title?
Not just a couple years ago. Just a couple years ago.
Okay.
Wasn't it just the females?
No, that was X-Men. Uncanny X-Men was Magneto's book for a while. He was leading that team.
Oh, that's right.
When Bendis was writing it and stuff.
Right.
So it's only been a couple years that we haven't had an Uncanny X title. This is volume 5.
Well, you're right, exactly. And at the end, it said it's issue number 620. Technically, so it's Ed Brisson, Kelly Thompson, Matt Rosenberg, Lenny Hughes on it, whole bunch of names on there. Rosenberg's on there twice. It's an $8 book. It is a oversized story wise. It's 63 pages. Children of the Atom are back. That was actually something, we're talking about Stan Lee. It's something pretty interesting. I never realized until not that long ago, a lot of his characters, like the Children of the Atom, they were kind of like when he was creating these, it was the mid 60s, I guess. Right at the height of like the Cold War and try to get the space and all this stuff. So all of these characters, like you had this radioactive spider in a lab, you had gamma radiation, you had cosmic radiation, you had the Children of the Atom, So all of these characters they were creating were kind of like born of like nuclear race. It's pretty interesting.
Yep.
But so that kind of I wanted to tie something to this book here. So it's ongoing. 10 parts. It's weekly.
Okay.
And this is all leading up to
this is weekly?
This is a weekly title. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
It's not going to be $8 a week though. Jeez.
But still, even $4.
Yeah.
That's worse than Spider-Man.
Yeah. But so 10 weekly. It's all going to lead up to Extermination. No, we already had Extermination. This is leading up to some type of cataclysmic event. I forget. Oh, Disassembled. No, this is Disassembled. I'm confusing myself.
Yeah,
it's leading up to something. Yeah, they're using all these words like that just kind of Anyways, all right. Let's talk about what we thought of this reintroduction to the Children of the Atom. You were already talking about it, Justin, so you can take it.
I mean, it was putting teams back together that haven't been together for a minute. was kind of what it was doing. We're kind of getting. I mean, it's a first issue. Like if we talk about first issues a lot, and you always come out of a first issue, or the majority of the time, with a lot more questions. This, of course, like the last couple page reveal was really really cool. I liked how they kind of wrote that in. You don't get to see that character that often. I'm not going to spoil it unless we really want to. So
Yeah,
I liked what they did there. And I have my guess of who the villain is or whatever, but we'll see what happens. But overall, I liked it. Like you said, it touched on there's something big going on. Storm's having an issue with her powers, not being able to control. Jean can't read certain people's thoughts. You got multiple man trying to warn people or save things, but there's no clear answer on what's going on yet. So, I mean, I'm definitely in for the next issue next week. Is like I said, as long as it's not $8.
Right. Yeah, definitely. There was a lot. It reminded me of like 90s X-Men, where there was like mystery and intrigue in the middle of it, like with the virus thing and like what's going on with that, and the MLF and like what exactly is happening with Madrox and like who took over. Well, the question when I was reading it was who took over those people's minds, like you were saying. So definitely a lot of questions there that weren't distracting, but they were wanting you to read further into it, not like really like why'd you do that? You know what I mean? So it was good questions.
I don't remember how Multiple Man came back, because I remember Multiple Man dying during Death of X-Men from the Terrigenesis Cloud.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah.
So I don't remember them bringing him back, but whatever, it's cool.
Nobody stays dead.
That's right.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Is this are we getting in this book the first appearances of Forearm, Samurai, Strode, and Wildside, and all those guys?
No.
They've showed up before?
Yes. Wildside definitely has.
Okay. But
that MLF team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was cool. There was a cool scene with Polaris in X-23. She did like the fastball special.
Yeah.
And then Wildside was like, oh crap. So yeah. I don't know. Overall I liked it. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
It's a good first issue. I don't mind paying the $7.99 for it. I think that art wise and story wise, it did really good for what a first issue should do. And something that really separated this for me from a lot of recent books is it took a while to read. There was actually something there to read, and it wasn't like it was them talking and stuff. There wasn't like a lot of like narration, but it was well balanced with a good amount of action as well. So maybe that's because it was like 63 pages of story. But yeah. And then Psylocke has a cool new thing too to play with.
Yeah, new weapons.
That's right. So okay, so what would you give it out of 5 stars?
It had me going. I was fine with the art, so I'd say I'd give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay,
it was better than average.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. 4 out of 5. Yeah. How about you, Evan? The part that you read.
Even though I didn't finish it, the artwork was definitely, I guess, on par with. I know it was $7.99, but I'm going to put on par with like a $3.99 comic. It did have that 90s feel to it, which I really enjoyed, and I agree with Justin, man. Like it's, I'm going to finish it, but it's definitely interested me enough to continue reading it.
Yeah.
So I liked it a lot. I mean, for what I've read so far, I definitely give it like a 4 out of 5.
All right, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just so people know, if you haven't read it, it is broken into 3 parts, 3 stories. So there's the kind of the main story. There's something about Bishop, and then there's something about Armor, and what's the other one's name? But then that kind of ties into everything else. So it's broken out nicely. What I hear is that Matt Rosenberg with issue 11 is going to be taking over like main duties on the book instead of just being like one of the team.
Issue 11. Wow, they've got it. Well,
Yeah.
if they're doing, never mind, the first 8 are coming out in 8 weeks. So
Yeah.
this will go quick. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. What do you guys got coming up on your channels? Anything you want to promo? Any teases? Any
A return.
projects in the works?
A return of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
A return of stuff.
Okay. Return of the Mac.
That's all I'm giving you. Yeah.
All right.
It's Return of the Mac.
Nice.
you
Okay.
didn't.
Cool.
Oh,
All
man.
right. Yeah. Comic community needs some Justin in their feeds.
We'll get back there.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Sweet. How about you, Evan?
I'm actually going to be vamping it up here pretty soon. I'm going to start probably doing 2 or 3 videos a week as I get closer to, announcing what we got going on. But until then, I'm just pressing books and trying to get this project pieced together.
Yes.
And other than that, just
Secret
stay
project.
tuned because I'm going to be putting out a lot of stuff here real soon.
Awesome. Cool. All right. And I got some stuff in the works. Not 100% on next week because of the holiday. And then the end of next week is actually when I'll be doing my move. So we'll have to figure out, like, in terms of the show, if we want to just take the week off or move it to a different day. But we'll let you guys know. I finally have like posting abilities on YouTube, so
Nice.
keep an eye on like the feed and stuff, and I'll post updates on there. Once we talk about it and stuff, and I'll agree to something. So keep an eye on that. And then I got some videos. Like I still got to do like the cosplay video for the convention I went to last weekend. So that's on the way too. And I want to do a video of I haven't gone over to Brian B's shop yet, Phil's comic shop, but I got to deliver his prizes. So I showed that book because we were talking about Venom. So he's gonna be winning this.
Is he there in Florida with you?
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
So it's easy. I can drop it off. But what he doesn't know is I have 2 short boxes full of comic books over here that I'm going to give him. So I want to film that and see what his reaction is. And I just be like, here's 2 boxes of books. So that's going to help
They're
me.
full of Hulk 181s.
That's right. AF-15s. You got, some...
Maybe it's 98. All
Yep.
that good stuff.
Yep. It's, a lot of
Giving
books
back to the community.
You know?
You want to get rid of all those books that are older than 1970. Just get rid of them. They're old.
Exactly. Old schmold. Give me some moderns. Nah. I love my old books.
You don't want to have to buy separate bags for those. I get it.
Copies.
That's right. So cool. So, but I want to film that, when I bring him over there and just see if he laughs or whatever. So that should be coming up too. But thank you everybody for being here with us. This is all the time we have for tonight. Thanks for choosing to spend your evening with us. We know that there's a lot of other like sports and stuff. It's sports season now, so you have a lot of other ways you can spend your evening. So thank you for being here with us. We always do try to be one of the best sources for you for news and reviews and entertainment, especially here on Thursday nights. And we always appreciate you guys. Thanks for leaving your comments on Stan Lee, for questions, for sharing your experiences with him as well. And go ahead and leave those in the comments as well. And I do always want to shout out the folks who have done super chat donations. Appreciate that too. We are only live here Thursdays on YouTube, but you can check us out streaming. This will be up tomorrow on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, all your favorite places you can stream from. So you can look for that tomorrow to download into your podcasting. If it's your first time here, hit the bell, subscribe. Also check out everybody's channels, folks in the chat, sub them up. Let's grow this community. You'll be the first to know whoever you sub to when they upload new content. So that is pretty much it. I do want to give you one last reminder. Check out comicbooks.com and our friends over at comicfrontline.com. that's it. This is Comic Conversation. It's been another fun-filled episode, so we will see you very shortly. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Excelsior.